Now from the future of music to what's next in tech. Werner Vogels is our next speaker. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Amazon, where he's responsible in driving the company's technology vision. In his role, he also oversees Amazon's web services, which is the company's most profitable business. I'm very keen to hear from him today about what's next in quantum computing and AI. Werner will be interviewed by our dear DLD friend, Jennifer Schenker. She's the editor-in-chief of The Innovator. The Innovator is a media publication platform which focuses on the digital transformation and also on sustainability issues. The Innovator is read by the heads of innovation of some of the most important and biggest corporations all around the globe. And the two of them, I see you here, hi. The two of them are really, really DLD All Stars superstars. They have been with us for, I think, 10 years and more. And I really missed to kick off the year with you in Munich in January, but I'm happy to see you healthy on screen, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is really a DLD All Stars super match here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alessia, for that nice introduction. And it is great to be back at DLD and to be here tonight with Werner. So Werner, as the CTO running the 21st century rails that Amazon is building to bring us into the future, you have a unique vantage point. So let's hear some of your technology predictions for the year ahead. You wrote on your blog that when fast connections to the cloud are pushed to the furthest edges of the network, great things can happen. Now that 5G networks are starting to become a reality, how do you see cloud applications evolving?
Well, most importantly, I think, of course, is that when we were at DLD, what is it, 10, 15 years ago, when we first talked about cloud and things like that, it all seemed like a centralized replacement for your data center. Yeah, that's something in the middle. And I think what things have evolved over time is that, latency becomes more and more important, where, being able to push connectivity and be able to push compute to the edge is becoming more and more important, low latency. And so there's two things to that. On one hand, I think the rise of 5G means that if you can really put compute in the 5G access points, as we're doing now with cloud, is becoming more and more important, because you can start building these applications where the difference between what's physical, what's physical and what's digital becomes to sort of merge or fade into each other. If you look at like a device like the Amazon Echo, Alexa, it actually doesn't have much in it as a device. It's all software. Yeah, and what Andreessen wrote many years ago about sort of software is eating the world is become more and more important. The physical things that we see around us are less physical, but more digital. And as such, a lower latency connection to those kind of compute instances is becoming increasingly important. So on the other side, and there's one other thing that I want to mention, I think that's really become more apparent in the past year, is that when more and more and more people become reliant on digital services. Yeah, I mean, whoever went to DLD were all sort of, digital natives. Yeah, but the people that have become reliant on digital services in the past year may not have been digital natives. They may have been elderly people. They may have been people that are alone at home. They may be younger people. And as such, it becomes more and more important that I think in our thinking of designing applications and building applications, that we take the emotional sort of situation of their customers into account. Yeah, if people are anxious. People the future is uncertain for them. And as such, we need to make sure that we build a digital infrastructure so that we can build applications on top of that truly address those kind of topics.
So I think you've touched on something really important here. We all have become more digital, not just we, the digital natives, but everyone, out of necessity. And we're buying more things online. Education has become remote. Money is becoming digital. But beyond those kind of things and the kind of things that were early kind of things we're seeing in factories, how specifically do you think machine-to-machine communications will impact other areas like healthcare and transportation and entertainment? And can you cite some specific examples that we might see as early as this year?
Well, I think the rise of data collection, the use of data is obvious, and of course we've been as humans have been sort of exposed to that, whether it's recommendations or similarities or things that happen when we buy things. Machine to machine communication. I don't know really what the right number was. I think it was something like 35% in 2018 or 2019. That's the communication on the internet. I think for the coming year, we expect that to be rising way much higher, like over 50%, 50, 60% in terms of that the communication is no longer us watching video, but it is actually machines talking to machines. Mm-hmm. I think it is becoming increasingly important to have decisions being made on data instead of being made on sort of intuition. And so if I think about supply chain, if I think about sort of manufacturing, machine learning is going to play an increasingly important role in all of that, because think about the average age of a manufacturing equipment in the US is something like 28, 30 years old. Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, they're not used, those are not machines to be able to generate data and they have us be successful on that. No, it's all about alarming. It's all about when things are going bad. And so if you look at sort of modern manufacturing equipment, that really where we want to go is to be able to predict when things are going to go bad or when things are going to happen, or when, if you're in Texas now, what to do with the data that is all around you. How can we predict and see what's going to happen? A good example there is woodwinds, I think, in Australia. It's a natural gas, or it's an energy company that mostly burn natural gas. So they have these massive refrigerators where the gas goes into, they freeze it. And in the past, that all would be about the machinery around that, would be all about sort of alarming when things had gone bad already. Mm-hmm. And so they replaced it with sort of modern equipment, modern sensors, and all the data that came from that using machine learning. They are actually sort of seeing early signs of when things are going to go bad and be able to shut down the refrigerator before things go bad. So I think there's many situations like that, and I think that's just an energy one. For example, in healthcare. Mm-hmm. And I used to be a healthcare professional myself before I went into computing. And I remember my colleagues, radiologists, late at night, 10 o'clock, looking at this radiology imagery and sort of really trying to figure out what's going on, versus what's going on today is that in the past, we always had the requirement to keep data around. But in healthcare, you would keep data around by keeping them on film or an image and put them in the basement. Mm-hmm. Today, we can keep things around in the digital form. And suddenly we can start to compare digital forms to each other. And so we're able to see minuscule differences between something that happened 2 months ago versus the things that happen now, in ways that we would never be able to do before. And machine learning helps a lot in that. And I remember quite a few of my old colleagues there saying like, no, machine learning or AI is not going to replace us. It's going to enhance us. Mm-hmm. It's going to help us find things that we would never be able to do before. And if I look at sort of the past years for the pandemic, the way that, for example, we've been working with one of the larger research hospitals in Vancouver, getting long images from COVID sufferers from all over the world, from different types of equipment and all of these kind of things. And then making use of sort of technology to start to understand what are the differences there, what's happening to people, to find better cures. And as such, I think all of this technology, and definitely the machines talking to machines, is becoming more and more important.
As more and more things go online, there is concerns are being raised about cybersecurity. I mean, there's not a week that goes by that we don't have more news about cyber breaches. How do you see cloud security evolving? What do we need to do as everything, including critical infrastructure, is connected to the internet? What do we need to do to better protect against attacks?
Well, can we protect ourselves better? I don't know. The bad actors are evolving as fast as that the good actors are. Yeah, and as such, I think, if I would have been talking to my customers sort of like 5 or 10 years ago, the main reasons for moving to the cloud would all be about sort of more reliable, more scale, cost, driving costs down if you don't need it. These days, the number one conversation is all about security. It is about being able to make use of very advanced technologies to detect the problems that are going on, to predict them, to prevent them, to help customers very quickly sort of get things back if needed. This is not a problem that's going to go away. It's many of the large enterprises in the world are moving to the cloud because they realize they cannot make the kind of investments into security that companies like AWS is able to. And so it is not just a matter of just hiring the best security people, it's also being innovative in this space. If you look at products that we built like Guard Duty, and it's not like every customer is the same and as such you can protect them in the same way. No, every customer is different. Then as such you need to learn machine learning. You need to learn from natural access to their services to sort of start to understand what are unnatural accesses. Or products like Macy, where you can actually figure out what is normal access to my data versus this may be out of the ordinary, and sort of you need to start raising alerts. And so it is on one hand being able to operationally be able to sort of protect our customers, but also at the same time in terms of innovation, trying to figure out what are the kind of things that we can do to be ahead of bad actors. And I think these days, and I'm coming back and I'll try to make that point a few more times, with many more people coming online, many more people that are not as smart and as well educated in terms of protecting ourselves as we are. We need to sort of beef up our security, not just at the infrastructure layer, but also teaching, let's say, my customers about how they should be protecting their customers, because I think that is crucial. Now, if you mentioned saying financials, well, if all of your financials are going to be online today, is also going to be the honeypot for anybody that will do anything bad to you. And all the phishing we're smart enough about, if you get an email about with phishing saying like, oh, your PayPal account has been suspended. Please click here to reenact it. There's tons of people that have not grown up in this world, and as such, we have as a digital people, we have a responsibility to make sure, not only in terms of education, but also in terms of building technology to make sure that we can protect our customers.
So as your corporate customers are grappling with new challenges in cybersecurity and scaling up AI, they also have to start preparing for the future. And quantum computing promises to allow computers to run thousands of times faster and approach computing in new ways. And, if we manage to implement it, we can get new applications in areas like economic forecasting and material science and drug development. So from what I understand, the adoption is still some years away. Does it make sense for companies to start developing potential quantum computing use cases and experimenting with it now, given that it's so different from what we're using today, that it really is this huge leap into almost the unknown?
No, I think what you're saying is correct. It's hugely unknown. Yeah, and as such, I think for those, there's a number of areas where I think quantum will have significant impact, and whether that's life sciences, but mostly what we would consider, I think, the heavy compute side of our future. I mean, is it going to change our website? No, it's not. Is it? No, none of those. I mean, that's not going to have a significant difference. I think we've already made all the progress there that we would like to make. In terms of quantum, I think experimentation at this moment is the most important thing. I think, but then in general, I think whether it's quantum or whether it's AI or whatever, I mean, experimentation, trying to figure out what this can mean for your company or for your business is important. And at this moment, so if I look at sort of the quantum computing services that AWS offers right now, is mostly around companies that are willing to experiment. So what will this do for us? And most of that is still very scientific or oriented. It's not focused on, let's say, product development. It's really how can we, if we're a life sciences company and we have these proteins that we want to fold this other component into to see whether or not this sort of blocks sort of the next evolvement of this protein. In the past, it's sort of a very brute force kind of thing. It's like having a lock and have 20,000 keys, and you need to try every key in there to see whether it unlocks a door. And so quantum may be able to help sort of accelerate that and do things that we now be able to do at AWS, let's say in a week versus what it used to be 2 months on premise. Quantum may give you the ability to do it in 5 minutes. Yeah, and so the ability there to speed these things up is mind-blowing. Because in the past, because it would take so long to do all of these sort of brute force permutations, you would start to discard things that you think, no, that's probably not likely. Yeah, but now you're able to run through all of them, even if they're not unlikely. And so the speed up of that and the ability to do that allows us to look at a much faster space than that we would be able to do before. And so is quantum going to be the future? It's not going to be the future for consumer compute. We don't care. Yeah. Is it going to be important for figuring out what stock X, Y, or Z is going to do next day? Maybe. Is it going to be extremely important in healthcare and other parts? Yeah, absolutely. Because we'll be able to do things that we've always talked about, let's say personalized healthcare, and things like that require enormous computational power. Yes, it's going to be very important for that. But we're still at the phase where we actually are trying to figure this stuff out. And it's not just the hardware, because we have the hardware. I mean, our customers at AWS can get access to hardware whatever they want. But it's also about sort of the software environment around it. Because all those kind of things are still in development. How do you develop for this? How do you bring this? And that's the compute folks, the old HPC folks are used to having sort of unique software. But to really bring this into mainstream, we'll need to do a lot more work at the software side, versus the hardware side.
So I'm conscious that we're getting close to the end, and I wanna ask you. No, it's okay. I want to ask you a question. You know, you've talked about how some of these technologies, machine learning and quantum computing, can help us solve some of the world's biggest problems, and one of those is, of course, world peace. And so I'm bringing up something that Yossi Vardi mentioned to me, that, you know, years ago, he brought you to a meeting with the late Shimon Peres, who was a former president and prime minister of Israel. And when you presented to him about cloud, he said, great, this is going to, you know, keep all the young people busy creating applications, and, you know, they're going to be less willing to go to war with us. Tell us about that conversation, and what were your takeaways about that, about the impact that technology can have on society?
Well, I'm very grateful for Yoshi to introduce me to the late Shimon Peres. I think the thing that I took away from that was that, you know, an angry neighbor is a violent neighbor. And so can we find ways? And so the way that sort of I presented cloud computing to Perez was all about sort of enabling everybody to become successful. Where you no longer need to be able to have, was it $1 million to start a company? Anybody with a small pocket of money can start the way that they're going and then become successful. And so I think that's still the case. But there's a but to all of that. You have to be willing to look at the hardest problems in the world. And so I've been doing a TV series called Now Go Build. And Now Go Build is all focused on young businesses that are solving the world's hardest problems. It's not about technology. It is about people. And it is about sort of using technology to solve the problems that we see around it. And I think the first episode was with a company called Howard Token. So where in Indonesia, smallholder farmers have no identity. So they can't get a loan. They have to go to loan sharks and pay 60% loans, 60% interest on their loans. And so Howard Token gives them identity, gives them a sort of data about sort of the plot of land that they have, and they can go to a bank and get a normal loan, about 5%. Or whether it is about sort of conservation in South Africa, or whether it is healthcare in Brazil, or whether it is education in Berlin, or whether, and one of the biggest problems in our world is, you know, how do we create enough food for people to live off? How do you create enough protein? And so there's a company that sort of tries to grow enough fish in big pens in Norway to think about, because 1 kilo of fish feed results in 1 kilo of fish, basically. And so how do you have 200,000 salmons in your big pen? And how you make use of machine learning and technology to see how they grow, and whether sickness arises among them. And so technology is one part of it. But I think we really need to start looking at sort of the real big problems in the world and see whether we as technologists can actually be very inventive in trying to solve those.
Thank you, Werner, because I think you've very well answered the question posed by DLD, which is, what the world needs now. And the answer is not just tech, but also purpose. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was amazing listening to you both. We know each other for so long time. We went a big journey together, don't we? What this evolvement of technology. Werner, you were always on the forefront. I remember so good when you first gave a speech at DLD about clouds.
When was that?
This was 12 years ago or so, 11 years ago. I put you together with some cloud spotters. Remember, very out of the blue, I thought cloud, okay, cloud. It changed a lot. Thank you for your friendship, dear both. It's wonderful having you. Thank you.
Well, Steffi, also, I think we all have to give a great thanks to you for bringing us all together. And even this, in these times when, it's February now, it's no longer January, but we know we'll be together. There's no snow here. But thank you very much, Steffi, for actually inviting us all back into your heart and be there.
And I will continue. Thank you, Jennifer, too.